Welcome back everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to smoke beef ribs in the Weber Kettle. So we're going to get started today by setting our Weber up. Right, so we'll take our lid off and our cooking grate, and we're going to be using the slow and sear today. So we'll get started by filling our charcoal basket up. And now we can bury a couple of fire lighters in there. Just start at one end of the charcoal basket and we'll get them lit up. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes before that charcoal is going to be ready, so we'll use that time to trim and season these beef ribs. We've picked this beautiful rack up from our butcher at Austral Meat, and when I'm looking for beef ribs, I want to see a lot of intramuscular fat in there. That's going to make for some nice juicy beef ribs, so we'll get started by trimming them up. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is flip them over, and there's usually 2 layers underneath, so I'm going to start in the corner. I'm going to gently get my knife under there, and we want to peel away the top membrane. So as you can see, that's the top layer, and we've got this layer underneath. And you want to peel it off just like so. Now if we left that on, that would just end up being super tough and chewy, so that's why I like to take it off. And if you can't get it the first time, just change corners and you will eventually get it. Another option is taking out the membrane in between each bone, and then you'll expose that meat as well. But I'm happy with how the bottom's looking now, so we'll flip it over and get started on the top. Now again, I like to start on the corner, and again, we just want to take this thin top layer of silver skin and fat off. Once you're in there, try and angle your knife slightly upwards, and that way you won't be digging into the meat. And also pull the meat away from the knife as well, and that way your knife will be doing less work. Tidy up a bit on the end here. All right, these are looking good. Time to season them. All right, now it's time to get these beef ribs seasoned up. We're going to be using a combination of our garlic galls and steak shooter, but if you've got another favorite beef rub or salt and pepper, that will do the trick nicely as well. One other thing we're going to do is we're just going to lightly coat the underside of these ribs with some olive oil, as there's not much moisture on there. It's just really going to help these rubs adhere to the meat. So we'll get these beef ribs seasoned up. Alright, so our charcoal's caught alight nicely, so we can get our cooking grate on, then we'll get our lid on, we'll make sure our top and bottom vents are wide open, and we'll give this Weber 5 minutes to preheat. Alright, these beef ribs are ready to go on. We've got some smoking wood ready. I'm going with a combination of pecan and cherry, but if you've got another favourite smoking wood for beef, then by all means go ahead and use that. So all we need to do now is get these beef ribs on. Alright, so we'll take our lid back off, we'll get one of our cherry chunks on straight over the top where the fire's burning, and then we'll put a piece of our pecan on, and then our last chunk of cherry. Then we'll get these beautiful beef ribs on. We'll fill up our water pan with hot water, and then we'll get our lid back on. Right, so now our beef ribs are on, all we've got to do is get our temperatures stable, and I'm going to look to stabilise our Weber off at around that 275 Fahrenheit or 135 Celsius range. As always, we're going to be leaving our top vent open, and we'll just control our temperatures using our bottom vent. So if we need an increased temperature, we'll open up our bottom vent slightly. If we need a decrease, we'll shut it down slightly. But these slow and sear units are really stable. That's why I love using it, especially since it's got the inbuilt water pan in there. So like I said, we'll just stabilise our temperatures off, and we'll come back once we're about 1 to 2 hours into this cook. All right, we're 2.5 hours into this cook now. Our temperatures are holding beautifully. We've got our bottom vent open just a crack, and that's working nice. So let's have a look at these beef ribs. All right, so these beef ribs are looking awesome. We're starting to get some nice drawback on the bones on both sides. Just going to give them a nice spritz now. And I've just noticed this piece of smoking wood didn't quite burn away, so we'll put it on where it's burning at the moment. We'll get our lid back on and let these keep smoking away. All right, so for the rest of this cook, I'm just going to check on these beef ribs every 1 to 2 hours, and if they look a little bit dry, I'll spritz them with water. If you've got beef stock or apple cider vinegar, that'll work too. It's not really going to give you any extra flavour. It's more just to help with moisture retention and bark formation. Now I'm going to continue to do that until I'm ready to check for probe tenderness, which is going to be at around the 205 Fahrenheit or 96 degrees Celsius internal mark. Now I'm not going to wrap these beef ribs. I like to leave them unwrapped for the whole cook, so I get that nice bark on the outside outside, but if you did want to wrap them to speed up that process, you can do at around that 160 Fahrenheit or 71 degrees Celsius internal mark. Now, wrapping them in butcher's paper or foil definitely will help speed up that process. You might save a couple of hours cooking time if you do decide to do that, but you will lose a little bit of that bark. So we'll keep checking in throughout this cook, and the beauty about that slow and see is once you start getting to the end of that charcoal, you can top it back up and it'll burn back the other way. But we should still get a good 8 to 10 hours burn time out of that. So we'll let these beef ribs keep going and check back in soon. All right, so we're coming up to the 6-hour mark into this cook. Our temperature's holding beautifully around that mark we want it to be at. So let's have another look at these beef ribs. Oh, these are looking amazing. So we're at about the 185-ish range. Still got a couple of hours of charcoal left, I reckon. So we'll get our lid back on and keep going. All right, so as you've seen, our ribs were sitting at around that 185 Fahrenheit or 85 degrees Celsius internal mark. I said we'll start checking for probe tenderness around the 205 Fahrenheit or 96 degrees Celsius mark. I reckon we'll be about an hour off hitting that stage, so we'll come back then. Right, we're 8.5 hours into this cook now, and we did stall for a little while there, so it's been 2.5 hours since we last checked when we were at that 185 Fahrenheit or that 85 degrees Celsius. They're probing nicely now, so let's have a look, get them out and slice them up. So these are looking so good. I did top up a little bit of charcoal as well before, just to get us through to the end of the cook. I don't think we would have needed it, but it's always good to be safe. So these are just probing like butter, as you can see, no resistance there. So let's get these out and slice them up. All right, time to taste. That is so unbelievably good. Now that is unbelievably tasty, super juicy, nice and tender. You probably noticed we didn't give them a rest. I find beef ribs very forgiving. If you've got the time, definitely give them a rest, but as you can see, they are super juicy, super tender. That bark's awesome, everything you want in a beef rib. I mean, seriously. Oh, as usual, very impressed by the slow and sear. I'll put links to everything we've used in the video down in the video description if you wanted to check it out. But for now, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. Oh man.